West Michigan. We are sitting down today with Mike Rogers, one of the 4 candidates running for the U.S. Senate here to represent the state of Michigan. Mike, I want to thank you for being with us here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you began your political career in the 90s in the state Senate. Then you made a move to the U.S. House of Representatives from 2001, a position you retired from in 2015. That was 9 years ago. What have you been doing since then, and why make a political comeback to the U.S. Senate specifically?
Yeah, so I went out and got in business, cybersecurity mainly. I have a cybersecurity expertise, so I've been working with small companies, try to make them bigger companies, to protect data, to protect your own personal network and business networks from Chinese hackers and Russian hackers and Iranian hackers. So I have a passion for that. Certainly that was important. I did a little media up front on when I got out. Enjoyed that. Was actually the executive producer of a show that ran called Declassified: Untold Stories of American Spies. Had fun doing all of that. It was great. But, we have a lot going on. So our son is a Naval Academy graduate and a young naval officer. And I'm worried about, the state of the military and the absolute disaster that we see internationally. I've never seen so many threats toward the United States in my entire time about worrying about national security. That got me motivated. Then you look at all my family spread across Michigan here, having a hard time making their budget get the groceries you need by the end of the month. Their gas prices are up. The fact that we have an open border that has given us 10 million illegal immigrants, illegal immigrant crime on the surge, fentanyl, methamphetamine, just drowning our communities, killing our kids, 3,000 last year in Michigan. And I started thinking about all of these big problems and thought, you know what, I've been there. I can walk in on the very first day and get to work at fixing these problems. And that's why I think was the big motivation for us, my wife and I, to say we're going to do this.
And, I've heard that from some of the other candidates we've spoken with, identifying some similar issues and saying, I'm the one to fix them. Why are you, Mike Rogers, the one to do it over the people you're running against?
First of all, I have experience. I don't have to worry about on-the-job training. I don't have to go through a training class. When I walk in that first day, I'm going to have the opportunity to work with colleagues that I've known from the past, build relationships that you absolutely have to do to get these big issues solved. And I showed in my time in the United States Congress back 9 years ago, I could do that, and I could do it in a way that actually accomplished pretty important things for the country. And having, Donald Trump, who I believe is going to win this election, being able to pick up the phone and work with him to solve the border, to solve the fact that you're paying all this money for more for groceries and gasoline and household goods, that young Americans can't buy homes right now. We have solutions for those. That's the difference, and I know how to implement those, and I think that's what puts me in a better place to get these things done.
Glad you bring up Donald Trump. You've received the endorsement from him. In a recent political ad, he said not only does he think you can win, but win big. What does winning big look like for you, and how do you make that happen?
So I believe he was talking about the general election for this. We're well ahead in the primary, and we're almost 30 points up in the primary today. So we're going to continue to work the primary. We talk to a lot of primary voters about issues that are important to them, why we're the ones to actually accomplish that, and work with President Trump when he becomes president again to do that, to fix those real problems for real people sitting at their table today wondering if they're going to pay their mortgage or how do they keep their car running a little longer because they can't afford the interest rates on a new payment. All of those things we have solutions for. And in the general, it's the same. Listen, all of the problems that we just talked about, increase in crime. I mean, right here in Grand Rapids, you had the death of Ruby Garcia from somebody who had come into the country illegally. We had sexual assaults of minors happening around the state. My home county of Livingston County, a 14-year-old by an illegal immigrant. Organized crime gangs operating illegally, by the way, illegal entrants, joined a gang, are operating in Southeast Michigan doing high-end home invasions. That's real. The fact that fentanyl is impacting almost every Michigan family in a negative way because of that open border. So he's talking about the fall. Those are issues that people are worried about. Independence. We're even having Democrats call our campaign and say, how do we help? We need to change? We need normal back. You know, they want the border fixed. They want to be able to have their paycheck cover their expenses at the end of the month. They're not really interested in having biological men compete against women in sports. They just want normal back. And I think we're best equipped to do that. And I think that's why Trump believes that we're going to win big.
Mm-hmm. You have been the subject of scrutiny for a couple of different topics that I feel obligated to bring up. One of them is your residency, and the other one, the nominating petitions. I want to talk about the residency first. You've been living in Cape Coral in Florida until 2023. You purchased a home in White Lake Township a month before you registered to vote in Brighton Township. I just want to make sure we get it for the record. Mm-hmm. Where do you live?
Right now, I'm in Brighton when the construction of the house. But you have to remember something. I've been a part of Michigan for over 40 years, longer than any other Republican in this race. I've been a part of Michigan. I've represented Michigan. My family's in Michigan. So about 2 years ago, we thought maybe Florida was the way to go. But when we look back at family demands, our family that is here, and what the government is doing to the people that I know and care about, my neighbors, my friends, my family in Michigan. So this isn't a residency issue as much as they want to kick up some dust about it. Mm-hmm. This is about somebody who came home to make a difference in their community, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
So Brighton Township?
Well, right now it's Genoa Township. We'll move as soon as my house is complete.
Okay.
And if somebody said, why White Lake? I'm happy to tell you. That's where my extended family is. My wife's brother and sister-in-law, our two niece and nephew, who are very active in sports and plays and all of that. And we want to be closer, and we were trying to bring more family closer together so we can participate in those activities, mm-hmm. too. It's going to be, we're excited about that. Hard for me to leave Brighton. That's where I was born and raised, and you know, my family has very deep roots there. But I think it's good and important to be next to family.
Why did you leave in the first place? A Michigan guy through and through. You left to live in Florida. Why did you leave, and why did you feel this was the time you needed to come back?
Well, I told you why we wanted to come back, and what was interesting is we've been in Florida for 2 years. Mm-hmm. I still think Michigan is a much better place to live, raise your family, much better place. The quality of people here, pretty spectacular, and you get such a wide diversity of people here and opinions all across the state. This was me coming home, mm-hmm. And that's really the end and short of it. Remember, 40 years. Matter of fact, I have more time in Michigan than both of the Democrat candidates combined. And as I said, nobody comes close to the 40-plus years I've spent in Michigan, being a part of this community, working in this community, going to college in this community. This is my home, and mm-hmm. this is where my family is. And my wife says, and this is where our dog is, and home is always where your dog is.
That's as the saying goes, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
funny. I want to talk about the nominating petition as well. It's not just with you, but also a couple of other candidates on the ballot for the August primary. Democrats have requested investigations into Justin Amash and Sandy Pensler as well. Allegations of potential forgery. For you specifically, I want to make sure I'm getting this right too. A review of signatures by lawyers from the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, as well as the Michigan Democratic Party, showed 23% of the signatures were from people not registered to vote in Michigan. You've denied that, but how does that happen if it's not true?
This is you answered your own question. Democrat lawyers with the Democrat committee making allegations. We're on the ballot. There is no contest to that. They're outside the window of that. I have full faith and confidence. This is a Democrat ploy to try to draw confusion, number one. And number two, this is the new tactic for the Democrat Party. How do I deny voters the right to vote for somebody they want to vote for? So they do really cheap tactics exactly like this to try to give the perception something's wrong. It's not, or if they feel like they could be successful, which they cannot. I'm not worried about this 1 second, 1 minute, 1 day. This is all Democrat tactics to throw dust. And you know why? They can't talk about what the grocery prices are for people who are struggling at the end of the month. They can't talk about gas prices. 4 years ago, under $2, today $3.50. And by the way, Democrat policies want to make that more expensive for you. When you start going down the list of things that worry people, this is why they talk about that, and they don't talk about how they didn't close the border, invited 10 million illegal immigrants in who are now causing crime around the country, serious crime, raping young girls at parks around the country. This is serious. They don't want to talk about any of that, and I don't blame them. So they do silly things like this. And anytime you use the word Democrat and lawyer in the same sentence, pretty much know there's not much to it.
Either way, your name is going to be on the ballot for
Yes.
the August primary, and we'll see what happens moving into the general election in November. Let's say we get there, and there's a split vote between, you want to bring over some potential Democratic voters to swing them to boost your chances at winning the election to represent Michigan in the Senate. How can you convince voters that you are the right person when there's a lot of, for better or for worse, controversy attached to your name as a candidate?
There's not controversy attached other than your perception of it. My record is really strong and solid. So again, what people are trying to do is throw anything they can against the wall, hope it sticks. That's the kind of politics people don't like. That's the kind of politics brought me back to try to put an adult in the room back in Washington, D.C., and man, do we desperately need it. Our military needs to be revamped, and trust me, as a fourth generation, my son is fourth generation. I served in the United States Army. My dad served in the Air Force in the Korean War. My son is serving now. My uncle is a tail gunner in a B-17. This is important to the future of this country. I have an understanding of that, and I know how to fix it. That's really, really important. So yeah, are they going to say everything they can under the book that tries to distract from the fact that I have solutions for our military and our national security? I have solutions to close the border and put a little sanity back in this and try to protect our communities? Yeah, absolutely, they're going to try to distract from that. That I have a plan to actually get after the high cost of groceries, which is what people talk about every single day, because they know their paychecks don't go to the end of the month anymore. We're going to help them restore that. And I have plans for all of it. We have a literacy problem in America. I'm going to fix it. Working with black pastors in Detroit to start talking about how we regain the literacy foothold that gives people the opportunity to better themselves and get upward mobility. They don't want to talk about that either, because the Democrats have absolutely destroyed our schools. We have 80% of students across Michigan can't read at grade level. That is a problem. It's a crime that we're doing this to these kids and sentencing them to less than their full opportunity in America. And they know that they can't talk about any of those things because they're talking about Democrat lawyers trying to, scribble some papers and some notes.
It's a lot of issues you bring up. How do you prioritize them?
Well, listen, first, if we don't get every family kind of reoriented to being able to have their paycheck last to the end of the month, that's the most serious problem that families face today, right? I think having a guy like me that's been around the block, understanding how to do multiple things at once, already knowing who I pick up the phone and call when I get to Washington, D.C. means I can do more than one thing at a time. So yes, we have to make sure all of those pressures that cause high grocery prices, including government spending, remember, the interest on the national debt will be bigger than the Department of Defense next year. That's unsustainable. That's just the interest payment. Doesn't pay for one Social Security check, doesn't pay for one soldier, sailor, Marine, one bullet. It pays for the interest on the debt. We can't sustain that very long or we're all going to be in trouble. So you got to work on all of these things all at the same time. And the federal government dumping all that money, and it's economy 101, when all of that cash pours in for fewer goods and services, we all know this, prices go up. That's exactly why inflation's going up. It's those big spending, big borrowing policies of the Democrats that have caused families to hurt in real ways. I was just talking to a clerk grocery store the other day. Said, I got it when the cart gets a little skinny because when inflation started going up. But when I watch people reach up on the conveyor belt and have to put it back in the cart because they can't afford it, because grocery prices keep getting higher and higher and higher, breaks, as she said, breaks my heart. And she said, I'm seeing it more and more and more. Those issues we have to work on across a level, and you can't just do one thing. You have to do it all. Close the border, remain in Mexico, make sure that we get the FBI reoriented from whatever the politics it's decided it needs to do, away from that and focused on things like dismantling the fentanyl network that is killing our kids today, right? We have to do all of that all at the same time. That's why you want someone like me that can walk in on the first day and get that done.
How does someone like you attack inflation? I know that's probably got to be the biggest issue that's crippling people in America right now, especially in the state of Michigan. It's nice to talk about it, reducing the inflation, but how do you go about making that happen? What does the term of Mike Rogers look like when it comes to inflation?
So first thing, again, you have to right-size the government. They are too big, too unwieldy. And now they're mandating your car. They're mandating how you cook your food. They're mandating how much water you have in your toilet, what kind of light bulb you have, how big your windows are. All of that has to end, right? These EV mandates is raising costs across the board. So you have to stop that. The government needs to get out of mandating those kinds of things. Plus, electric vehicles probably aren't the best thing for the environment if you do the math all the way through. And it also weights our adversary, China, which 85 to 90% of that car has to be processed in China. That's not good for the United States, not good for our economy. So you have to deal with things like that. Spending has to end. When I was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, $78 billion budget, height of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, I was able to find $7.5 billion and cut it out. So when people say, oh, you can't do that at the government, no, you can. It's hard work. You don't run to the TV all the time. You're not a star on social media. You go through line by line and do what you're supposed to do, that the people sent you there, is watch their money like a hawk. Well, we can do that. Didn't cut muscle, didn't cut bone, cut 10% out of that budget. Huge thing that we're going to have to do coming up. And that includes, by the way, the rise in administrative staff at Department of Defense. That's probably got to go. We're going to have hard decisions made. So that helps curtail the size and scope of government, number one. Number two, we need energy independence. I'm for all of the above. You want to have solar, great. You want to have windmills, great. You want to buy an electric vehicle, that's good for you. Don't mandate for every family to do that. However, if we explode our ability to produce the energy that we need in this country, then it stops that money from going overseas. Right now, we're sending a lot of money based on Washington, D.C., the kind of Biden-Slotkin agenda to send money to people who don't like us very much. We can stop that. We should stop that. And so you start to grow the economy, right? That's a huge amount of money pouring back into the economy. You cut the size and scope of government. Those would be the first two big things we do. And then you have to attack the regulatory state. If you talk to farmers here, if you talk to small businesses here, they are dying under the weight of all of this new regulation regimes that is making it harder for them to be profitable, harder for them to employ people, harder for them to make it. Matter of fact, our farmers, think of this, first time in the history of the United States, last year, we had to import more food than we exported. Let that sink in for a minute. We've never had that before. You ask farmers why? It is the regulatory burden coming out of Washington, D.C., between the Biden administration and his Democrat allies in Congress. It is causing these farmers not to be competitive. And when they're not competitive, we end up buying food offshore. That is not a recipe for success. All of those things can happen. I would rather our farmers exporting all this food. Good for our economy, means we can feed ourselves if we have to. All of these are good outcomes. All at the same time, you'll have an impact on inflation when we do those things.
We know about Trump's support for you. On the flip side, I would imagine it's the same. But specifically, I'm just so interested and curious about the overwhelming support for Donald Trump. Not just, we've seen so many people, record numbers, voting for him the last election. If not for Joe Biden getting another record himself, Donald Trump would have secured a second term. But this is a guy who just was convicted on 34 different counts, and it doesn't seem like it's changed his supporter base. Why do you think that is? What does that say about his supporter base to continue to follow in line with someone facing those convictions?
I think it says more about the Democrats and how they're weaponizing the court system than it does about his supporter base. I get out around the state a lot. I talk to a lot of independents, talk to Democrats. They are concerned about what they see as cases that are politically motivated. I'm a law and order guy. I believe in law and order. I've been endorsed by the Police Officers Association of Michigan, 35 sheriffs, the Southeast Chiefs Association in Michigan, police chiefs, because they understand that I know and understand and have practiced law enforcement in my life. I get it. This is not that. These are twisted cases that I believe the case in New York will be overturned. I don't think they care because that's going to happen after the election. And when people start seeing this kind of activity where they're weaponizing the court system to go after their political opponents, like hiring a whole bunch of Democrat lawyers in D.C. to try to kick up some dust on the Republican folks that are here that isn't true, well, guess what? People are starting to say, wait a minute, that's dangerous. And I think it's really dangerous. We want law enforcement to get back to law enforcement. We want the courts to get back to worrying about people who are committing crimes and creating victims. We forgot about victims in this country, at least under Democrat policies. We need to get back to that. And so when they see that, it's not about the people that are somehow not right, as you're trying to suggest maybe in your question. It's about people standing up and seeing it. This is why, interestingly enough, the polling shows people are more convinced that Donald Trump will protect democracy. Why? He won't weaponize the courts. And I'm telling you, we have to get away from that. If we lose faith in our judicial system, we are in big trouble in this country. And using it the way that the Democrats have is causing people to lose faith. Republicans, Democrats, and independents are saying something's wrong, and we're going to do something about it. That's why his numbers are strong. That's why his numbers are going up. I think people realize that.
I wasn't implying anything with my question. I just think it's so interesting that a lot of people are saying it doesn't even change the way they think, when maybe on the flip side, if this had happened to Joe Biden, and who knows, but if he's also facing 34 convictions himself, I would imagine the response from Republicans would be a little bit different than what it is right now in support of Donald Trump, despite the 34 convictions. Doesn't it seem like either way it would be used as a political, that the other party would be using it to their political advantage? Well,
yeah, except for one thing. They started the case. They have a guy from the Department of Justice. Believe me, I understand how the Department of Justice works. When a senior level Department of Justice lawyer goes to New York for the specific purpose of taking a case that wasn't worthy of a federal case and tried to make it a state case in New York, that's a problem. And the FBI would call that a clue. Something wasn't right. And they had to twist the law in order to even bring those charges. Well, guess what? People see that for what it is. That's dangerous. That is just dangerous. And I think that's what you saw. I mean, the very fact that the judge certainly was convicted, there were so many reversible errors in this case by the judge. The judge himself is a Biden supporter. His daughter was a big fundraiser for the Democrats who used this case to raise money for the Democrat Party. I mean, please. I mean, again, I'm a law and order guy. If somebody breaks the law, I do believe there should be some consequence for that. This was something very, very different, and Americans are seeing through it. That's what I think I think they've well overplayed their hand in this particular case.
We'll end it with this. A quick message, if you can look into this camera right here. This is how we're ending all our interviews. Your final message to the voters of West Michigan and the state of Michigan of why they should choose you.
If you're worried about the wide open border, I have a policy to fix it. I'll work with Donald Trump to get that done. If you're worried about your gas prices, your grocery prices, the fact your kids can't get a mortgage to buy a house, help is on the way. I would love your vote and would appreciate your support for getting this done. Remember, first day I get there, I can start to work on all of these issues that matter to your family and make sure that America is prosperous for the future and the future of your families as well.
That's the message, and you can go out and vote. Primary day is August 6th, 2024. Mike Rogers, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.